How do you get left behind at an airport for a vacation you paid for? How does your own son look you in the eye and tell you there was no ticket for you when you booked the whole trip on your card? I found out, and the next morning I woke up to 96 missed calls from the same people who thought I was just their wallet. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Martin Hale, and I was the one who paid for the Hawaii trip that I did not get to take. I am 52 years old, a senior project manager at a construction firm. Nothing flashy. I am the guy who carries a clipboard, signs off on safety forms, and stays late to fix other people's mistakes. At work, people listen when I talk, because they know I do not speak just to hear my own voice. At home, it is different. At home, I am mostly the man with the card. For a long time, that was enough for me. I grew up poor, so just being able to give my family things felt like a miracle. My wife, Karen, likes nice restaurants and trips. My son, Dylan, is 24 and calls himself a content creator. My daughter, Lily, is 16 and quieter than the rest. My mother-in-law, Brenda, lives alone a few streets away, but she is in our house so often that it feels like she has a room there. The rhythm of our life was simple. I worked, they spent, and we all pretended this was normal. The Hawaii trip started as my idea. For years I had this picture in my head. All of us standing by the ocean, someone asking a stranger to take a family photo, my arm around Karen, the kids smiling, waves behind us. I wanted a memory that could hang on the wall, not just another picture on Dylan's phone or another story on Karen's social media that would vanish in a day. So I opened a travel savings account. I set up a small automatic transfer every month. I skipped a few office happy hours. I brought lunch from home. I took on 2 extra projects in the last year. Every time I moved money into that account, I told myself that one day it would pay for that picture by the ocean. When the balance finally looked big enough, I sat down at my computer on a quiet Sunday morning and started planning. Flights, hotel, a couple of activities. I compared prices, read reviews, checked dates that worked with Lily's school schedule and my work deadlines. It took hours, but it felt good, like I was doing something solid and real for my family. When I had everything ready, I called for them from the kitchen. They came in one by one with half attention. Dylan had his phone in his hand. Karen was looking over his shoulder at some video. Lily leaned on the counter with a mug of tea. I told them that I had been saving, that this was my gift, that I wanted us to go to Hawaii together. I remember that I spoke calmly. I did not make a big emotional speech. I just laid it out. They were excited. Or at least, they seemed excited enough. Karen said that it sounded amazing and that we deserved it. Dylan said that he could get great content there. Lily smiled and asked about the beach. Brenda was told later, and she said that she always wanted to see Hawaii too. Somehow within a week, she was part of the plan as well. I did not argue. It felt petty to say no. I booked 5 tickets in my name. I booked a resort with a decent pool and walking distance to the beach. I paid the deposit with my travel card. Every time an email confirmation came in, I moved it to a folder labeled Hawaii Trip and felt a little burst of pride. I printed the itinerary and put it in a clear plastic sleeve. Old habit from work. Keep everything in order. The months went by. When bills came, I paid them. When extra trip costs appeared, I covered them. New swimsuits, luggage. A better camera for Dylan because he said his old one was not good enough for travel content. I watched the travel fund balance go down and the credit card balance go up and told myself it would be worth it when we were all together on that beach. The morning of the trip, I woke up before my alarm. That never happens. I made coffee, double-checked the printed itinerary, passports, and booking numbers. I laid them on the dining table. I put the passports in order, mine, Karen's, Dylan's, Lily's, Brenda's. I had this small, quiet happiness in my chest. It felt like the start of something good. The house was a mess of suitcases and half-zipped bags. Karen moved through the rooms in her usual rush, talking about chargers and outfits. Dylan was filming short clips of everyone getting ready for the big trip. He pointed the phone at me for a second. I gave a little wave. He laughed and said that I looked like airport dad, worried about nothing but paperwork. He did not say it in a cruel tone, but it still landed wrong. The drive to the airport took about 40 minutes. I drove, of course. The others talked about the hotel and the pool bar and which days they wanted to go to which beach. Brenda shouted from the back that she wanted to see a volcano. No one asked me what I wanted to do. I realized that, but I pushed the thought aside. I had already done my part. I had made it possible. Inside the terminal, the air smelled like coffee and airplane fuel. It was busy, but not crazy. I led the way to the check-in machines with the plastic sleeve of documents in my hand. I felt useful. This was my element. forms, numbers, confirmation codes. I printed the luggage tags and stuck them on each suitcase, then handed the bags to everyone. We moved together toward the bag drop, a little cluster of people I cared about, noisy and distracted. At the bag drop, the agent took our passports and tapped on his keyboard. He checked the bags, asked the standard questions. Then we were told to go through security. It all felt normal. I put my belt and wallet in the tray, took off my shoes, and walked through the scanner. On the other side, I waited while the others gathered their things. Dylan filmed a quick clip of the line and said something about travel chaos into his phone. At the gate, we sat down in a row of seats. The big screen above the counter showed our flight number and the word on time. I checked my watch. We were early. I like being early. It gives me time to breathe and look around. I watched Lily leaning her head on Karen's shoulder. I watched Brenda rummaging in her bag. I watched Dylan scrolling through his phone. When boarding started, we got up with the first group called. I took out the printed boarding passes from my sleeve and handed them out. One for Karen, one for Dylan, one for Lily, one for Brenda. I did not find mine. For a second, I thought I had dropped it. I shuffled the papers again. Empty. My stomach tightened in a slow, strange way. I told Dylan that I could not see my pass. He told me not to worry and that they had everything on the app. He walked up to the gate agent first. The agent scanned his phone, smiled, and waved him through. Then Karen, then Lily, then Brenda. I stood there holding the plastic sleeve. When it was my turn, I stepped up and handed my passport to the agent. He typed my name into his system. His friendly expression changed a little. Not dramatic, just a small frown. He said that he could not find a reservation for me on this flight. I told him that there must be a mistake because I had booked the trip. I said that all the charges were on my card. He checked again. Same result. No boarding pass for Martin Hale. Behind me, I felt people shifting in line. I heard a child ask their parent what was wrong. I saw Dylan glance back with his phone in his hand, then slowly walk back toward me. He asked what the issue was. I told him that the agent could not find my ticket. Later, when I thought about this moment, I remembered how calm I sounded. Not angry, not panicked, just confused. Dylan looked at the screen, then at me. He said that he had changed the booking a while ago and removed my ticket. He told me that he thought I did not like long flights. He said that I always complained about my back. He said that someone had to stay and hold down the fort. He said that he had forgotten to tell me. All of that was in his tone and his gestures, not exact words, but that was the message. There was something else in his eyes, too. Not guilt, not really. More like annoyance that this conversation was happening at the gate, in front of other people. Karen came over. She put her hand on my arm and told me that it was already done, that the booking was set, that there was no way to add me now without paying a huge fee and maybe losing the seats. She said that it was better if I just let them go and had some quiet time at home. She spoke as if she was comforting me, as if this was a kind decision. Behind them, Brenda shook her head and said that it was not a big deal. She said that I should enjoy some rest and let the younger ones have fun. She said that I would only worry about money the whole time anyway. A few people in line glanced at me. One of them, a teenage boy, stared with wide eyes. His father leaned down and whispered something to him. The boy's face changed, and he looked at me with pity. I felt heat rise in my face, but my voice stayed even. I asked the agent if there was any way to fix it. He was polite but clear. There was no seat in my name. The flight was full. He could not just conjure one. He looked uncomfortable, like he wished he could step away from the counter. Dylan said that they were holding up the line. He said that they would miss the flight. He told me that they would call me from Hawaii. He said that they would send me pictures. Again, he dressed it as a kind offer, but it sounded like a joke. In that moment, I understood that this was not a mistake. This was not an airline error or a missed email. This had been decided long before we arrived at the gate. They had planned to leave me behind. They had looked at those tickets, my name and their names, and decided that I was the extra piece that could be cut. I could have made a scene. I could have raised my voice. I could have demanded that they stay, that they fix it, that they refuse to board without me. Instead, I took a slow breath. I told the agent that it was fine. I told him to let them go ahead. I stepped away from the counter. Karen hugged me quickly, like a polite stranger. Brenda patted my shoulder and said that I should not be so sensitive. Dylan filmed a quick shot of them walking down the jet bridge. Lily turned around once and looked at me. Her face was uncertain. She lifted her hand like she wanted to wave, then dropped it and followed the others. I stood there until they were gone. The line of passengers moved forward. The gate area became quieter. A staff member closed the rope. The screen changed from boarding to gate closed. I walked back through the terminal, past the coffee stands and duty-free shop, down the escalator to the parking garage. My footsteps echoed on the concrete. The air was cooler down there, more empty. I found my car, unlocked it, and sat in the driver's seat with the key in my hand. For a few minutes, I just sat. No music, no tears, just a strange, hollow feeling in my chest, like someone had scooped something out and left the space clean and cold. Then my phone buzzed, a small, bright rectangle in the dark car. I looked at the screen. It was a notification from my credit card app. The message said that the full remaining balance for the Hawaii trip had just been charged and posted to my account, in my name alone, as the plane carrying my family pushed back from the gate without me. When I got home from the airport, the house felt wrong. It was the same place, of course. The same couch, the same framed photos on the wall, the same shoes by the door, but it felt like a stage after the actors have left. The lights were still on, but there was no one behind them anymore, at least not for me. I put my keys in the bowl by the door and walked into the kitchen. There were open cupboards, cereal boxes left out, a spilled splash of coffee near the sink. Everyone had rushed that morning. It showed. For a moment, I imagined a different scene. All of us coming back from Hawaii, tired but happy, dropping our suitcases and talking about the trip. That picture collapsed in my mind like a cheap tent. I set the plastic sleeve with the useless papers on the table and sat down. I told myself that I should eat something. I did not feel hungry, but I knew that I had to keep doing normal things or I would sink into a hole I did not know how to climb out of. My phone buzzed on the table. I glanced at the screen. A small group chat icon appeared. The preview line showed a short sentence and a laughing emoji. It said that they could not believe I had fallen for the airport thing. Then the notification faded. I did not open the chat, not yet. I turned the phone face down. I knew that if I read everything right then, I might lose the calm I had left. I needed that calm. It was the only thing holding me together. Instead, I leaned back in my chair and let my mind roll backward. I tried to see where this had started, this way of treating me like a piece of furniture that also happened to pay the bills. It did not start at the airport. It started years ago, in small ways. When Dylan was little, he used to look at me with bright eyes whenever I came home from work. He would run to the door and tell me about his day. When he was 12, he said that he wanted to be like me when he grew up, because I always knew how to fix things. Back then, I believed that I was building a solid foundation for him. Somewhere along the way, that changed. It was not sudden. It was a slow drift. I remembered one evening when Dylan was 17. He had decided that college was not for him. He said that he wanted to be a creator, not a worker. He told me that people made real money online now. At the time, I did not understand what that meant, but I tried to listen. I asked him about his plan. I asked him how he would support himself. Karen stepped in before he could answer. She told me that I was being negative and that I never believed in anyone's dreams. She said that Dylan was talented and that older people like me did not understand the internet. Dylan, nodding behind her, arms crossed, sealed that moment in my memory. I had tried to talk about responsibility, and they had treated it as an attack. After that, money became the main way I was allowed to show support. If Dylan needed a new camera, I paid. If his rent was late, I transferred money. When I suggested that he take a part-time job to cover some of his costs, he got angry. He said that a day job would kill his creativity. Karen said that he needed time to build his brand. I became the boring obstacle again. It was no different with Karen herself. When we first met, she liked that I was steady. She said that it was nice to be with someone who did not chase every new trend, someone who paid bills on time and kept promises. In our first years, she used to brag to her friends that I was reliable. She said that reliability was attractive. Later, reliability turned into a punchline. At dinner with her family, she would tell stories about how I watched the budget or compared prices, and everyone would laugh. Greg liked to tease me that I was married to my spreadsheet. Brenda would tell me that men like me were lucky to have women like Karen, who made life exciting. They said these things as if they were harmless jokes, but there was always that edge. I thought about a birthday dinner from a few years before. We had gone to the same chain restaurant we use so often. I had come straight from work, still in my office clothes. Dylan arrived late, wearing some flashy new shoes he bought with money I had given him the week before. Karen looked perfect, as always, in a dress I had paid for. At the table, Greg raised his glass and made a toast about family. Then he added a comment about how the only reason any of them could travel or buy nice things was because I was willing to swipe my card. Everyone laughed. Dylan repeated the joke in a louder voice, imitating my serious expression when I checked receipts. They thought it was funny. I smiled and let it pass. I told myself that it was just one moment. Lily had been there too. She was younger then. She had quietly pushed the last piece of her dessert toward me after the laughter died down. She had said that I should have it because I had barely touched my meal. She had thanked me for dinner in a low voice. Out of all the noise at that table, those words were the only ones that actually felt like gratitude. Lily was different. Not perfect, but different. She listened more. She asked how my day was sometimes. When I had back pain after long weeks on site, she would ask if I needed a heat pack. She did not fight her mother and brother directly, but she did not join in all their jokes either. I always felt that she was watching, keeping score in her own quiet way. I also thought about my work. At the construction firm, people respected me. Malik, my boss, often said that I was the one who kept the place running. He told others that I never lost my temper, never panicked, even when big problems came up. When I spoke in meetings, others stopped talking. When I asked for more time or more resources, he listened. That respect made the lack of respect at home even sharper. At work, I was Martin, the man you called when something important was on the line. At home, I was just Dad, the card. The contrast had been there for years, but I had pushed it down, covered it with the idea that this was what fathers and husbands did. They carried the load and kept quiet. Then there was Brenda. She came from a generation where men were expected to provide and not complain. She believed that my only job was to support her daughter and her grandchildren. When I raised concerns about spending, she would say that I should be proud to give them everything. When I suggested cheaper options, she would say that I was dull and that Karen deserved better. She did not say that I was a bad man. She just kept saying that I was not enough. I used to tell myself that she did not mean harm. Maybe she did not. But harm does not need intent. It just needs repetition. The Hawaii trip had turned into a perfect symbol of everything. I thought it was about family time, shared memories, a chance to show them that I still wanted to be part of their lives. For them, at least for some of them, it had become content, status, and a chance to have fun without the quiet man who paid the bill. They had let me plan it. They had let me dream about it. They had let me pay for it. And then, at the last moment, they had decided that I was not needed anymore. I thought about the conversation when I first suggested the trip. I had come home from a long day, told Karen that I had opened a travel savings account, and that my goal was Hawaii. She had smiled and said that it sounded like a dream. She said that we could make amazing photos there. Dylan had said that he could do a full series of videos. Lily had said that she wanted to see the sea turtles. No one had said that they did not want me there. No one had suggested that this would be an adults-only trip or a kids-only trip. It was always described as a family trip. My family, my money, their faces in the pictures. And now I was sitting in a quiet kitchen, alone, while they flew through the sky toward that dream without me. My phone buzzed again. Another notification. Probably more messages in that group chat. Probably more comments that I did not want to see. I turned the phone back upright and looked at it. My name was at the top of the screen. I was part of the group, at least in the app. The preview message I had seen earlier replayed in my mind. It had been light, casual, full of the kind of careless cruelty that people show when they are sure no one will hold them accountable. I put the phone aside and stood up. I walked to my small home office, the spare room where I kept my papers. The door creaked when I opened it. The room smelled faintly of paper and dust. The shelves were lined with binders. The desk held my older computer, a lamp, and a locked metal box where I kept important documents. I looked around the room and felt something shift inside me. This was the part of my life that no one else cared about. No one asked about the mortgage papers or the insurance policies. No one wanted to see the budget spreadsheets or the retirement plans. But these were the things that kept everything else standing. Without them, there would be no house, no trips, no safety net. It hit me, slowly and clearly, that I had spent years protecting them with this quiet work, and they had repaid me by cutting me out of the one thing I had built just for us. I sat down at the desk and opened the top drawer. Inside were neatly labeled folders. One had our house title. Another had information about our investment accounts. A third had the details of a family trust that an old friend, a lawyer named Andrea, had helped me set up years ago. At the time, she had said that it was wise to have things organized, just in case. I had not thought much about it since. I pulled out the trust folder and looked at the cover. My name was on it, as trustee. The beneficiaries listed inside were familiar. Karen, Dylan, Lily. I remembered that Andrea had mentioned conditions back then, something about support being tied to certain behaviors, like staying in contact and not committing serious harm to others in the family. I had nodded and signed where she pointed, trusting her experience. Until that moment in my office, I had almost forgotten that conversation. Now it came back to me, sharp and bright. Support tied to behavior, protection not just for them, but also for me. I did not open the folder fully, not yet. I closed it and placed it on the desk in front of me. My hands were steady. My breathing was slow. I realized that the hollow feeling in my chest had changed. It was still there, but now there was something under it, something solid, a small, hard core of understanding. This was not just about hurt feelings. This was about patterns, about years of being used and dismissed, about a line that had finally, clearly been crossed. I picked up my phone again. This time I did not look at the group chat. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Andrea's name. I hesitated for a second, then tapped it. When she answered, I did not tell her everything right away. I just said that something had happened with the Hawaii trip, that my family had left without me, and that I needed to talk about the trust and the way my accounts were set up. I told her that I wanted to understand what my options were. She said that I could come by her office the next day. She said that we would go through everything calmly. She sounded like she always did, practical and not easily shocked. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet room and listened to the faint hum of the house. Somewhere above me, the heating turned on. The fridge clicked. A car passed outside. The normal world kept moving. I looked at the trust folder, then at the closed door that led back to the empty kitchen, the half-packed house, the walls that held photos of a family that did not even want me on the same plane. For the first time in a long time, I did not tell myself that this would blow over. I did not tell myself that I just had to be patient, that they would come around, that parents and husbands had to take whatever came their way. I understood that I had a choice now. I could continue to be the man with the card and the quiet anger, or I could be the man who used the tools he had already built to protect himself. I sat very still, with my hand resting on the folder, and felt that choice settle inside me. The next morning, I woke up before the sun again, but for a different reason. The quiet in the house was heavier now that I knew what it really meant. It was not just that my family was away, it was that they had chosen to be away from me. There is a difference between someone being gone and someone deciding you are not welcome. I got dressed in my usual work clothes, even though I had taken the day off for the trip. The habit was strong. Shirt, trousers, belt, watch. I stood in front of the mirror and saw the same face I always saw. A bit older, more lines at the eyes, but the same man. Nothing about me looked like the kind of person you would cut out of a vacation. That thought made something twist in my chest. I took the trust folder from the desk and slipped it into my work bag. Then I went to the kitchen, made coffee, and finally picked up my phone. I opened the group chat. The messages were from late the previous night and early that morning. Dylan had sent a video clip from the hotel lobby telling the group that they had arrived and that the place was amazing. Karen had written that the flight was not too bad and that Brenda had already started talking about all the things she wanted to do. Greg had added a comment about how it was probably quieter without me there, along with a laughing emoji. Then there were the planning messages from before the trip. I scrolled up past the usual talk about packing and dates until I saw a conversation from a few weeks earlier. They had discussed the idea of surprising me at the airport with the news that I would not be coming. Dylan had said that it would be better this way because I would not argue if everything was already booked and fixed. Karen had said that I could use rest. Brenda had said that men my age should stop trying to keep up. No one in that thread had asked how I would feel. They had talked about me like I was luggage, not a person. I read every line slowly. It was like standing outside a window and watching people talk about you in a room you pay for but never enter. My hands stayed steady, my breathing stayed even, but inside, something that had been soft for a long time started to become hard. I took screenshots of the messages. Tap, scroll, tap again. I saved them to a folder on my phone. Then I went to my email and searched for the travel bookings. The first confirmation email was the one I remembered, with 5 passengers listed. Me, Karen, Dylan, Lily, and Brenda. The second email from a later date showed a change request. The summary mentioned 4 passengers now, not 5. It did not show the full details in the preview. I opened it and read it line by line. The airline had processed a change to remove 1 traveler. The system did not show the name in the part of the email I had, but it was easy to guess. Below, there was an attached note from the travel agent saying that the new arrangement had been confirmed at the request of the primary contact, which was Dylan. The contact phone number was his, not mine. Again, I took screenshots. I forwarded the emails to my personal address and to an old backup account. Then I saved the attachments to a folder on my computer labeled with the trip dates. None of this changed what had happened at the gate, but now it had a different shape. It was not just a cruel idea that had grown out of a last-minute impulse. It was a series of choices. A request to the agent, a change confirmed, a group chat full of jokes, a trail. I drank my coffee and opened a browser. On social media, I saw the first posts from Hawaii. Dylan had already uploaded a video of them walking through the airport there, with music and text about finally being on a real vacation. He had filmed Karen laughing, Brenda looking around, Lily dragging a suitcase behind her. There was no mention of me. It looked like a trip for 4, not 5. Karen had posted a photo of the hotel lobby with some caption about a dream finally coming true, thanks to years of hard work, support, and faith. People in the comments had congratulated her. Some had joked about how lucky she was to have such a fun group with her. She had liked those comments. I saved those posts too. I knew that they might be deleted later, once things started to go wrong. I had seen that happen before with other people. Online, people built stories for the world, and when reality did not match those stories anymore, they simply erased the old parts and pretended they never existed. After a while, I closed the laptop. I could feel anger under my ribs, but I did not let it spill out. Anger, on its own, does not fix anything. It only burns the person who holds it. What I needed now was not heat. It was clarity. I picked up my bag and left for Andrea's office. Her building was in the business district, several floors of glass and steel. I had been there a few times, mostly years ago when we first set up the trust and adjusted my will after Lily was born. The lobby still smelled like coffee and cleaning chemicals. People moved with purpose toward elevators and meeting rooms. Andrea greeted me in a small conference room with a long table and a window that looked over the street. She had her laptop open and a yellow notepad next to it. She did not look shocked when I told her what had happened. She rarely looked shocked about anything. She listened. That was her strength. I explained the trip, the airport, the missing ticket, the group chat, the changed booking. I spoke slowly, careful not to make it sound more dramatic than it was. The facts on their own were enough. She asked a few questions about dates, times, and who had done what. She wrote notes on her pad. She reminded me of the trust we had set up. She said that when we created it, we had included conditions about support being connected to basic respect and ongoing relationship. She said that the exact language would need to be reviewed, but that the idea had been to protect everyone from future harm, not just to hand out money. She told me that, based on what I described, there might be a pattern of serious disrespect and deliberate exclusion that touched those conditions. She said that this did not mean anything would change overnight, but that it meant I had options. She said that any steps would need to be planned and formal, not emotional. Andrea also reminded me of something else I had almost forgotten. The house was in my name alone. Years ago, when we bought it, Karen's credit situation had been complicated. It had made more sense to put the property under one name for the loan. We had always told ourselves that this was just a technical detail. Now it was a detail with weight. She asked if I had copies of the group chats and booking emails. I told her that I had them saved. She said that I should back them up in more than one place, and that I should avoid confronting my family directly right now. She said that it was better if I stayed calm and collected more information. When we finished, she suggested that we meet again soon to go over the trust documents line by line and to look at how my accounts were structured. She mentioned that we might also want to talk to my bank and possibly to an accountant, depending on what path I chose. I left her office feeling strangely lighter. Nothing had changed yet in the outside world. My family was still in Hawaii, living their online story. The charges for the trip were still sitting on my card. But inside, something had shifted. I no longer felt like a man who had been thrown out of his own life with no way back. I felt like a man standing in a room full of tools he had not realized he owned. On the way home, I stopped at a traffic light and watched people crossing the street. Parents with strollers, teens with headphones, office workers with phones in their hands. I thought about how many of them were probably carrying quiet loads, stories that would never show up in their social media feeds. It made me feel less alone. Back at the house, I went straight to the home office. I placed the trust folder back on the desk and added a fresh notebook next to it. On the first page, I wrote the date. Then I began a simple list. Every major event related to the trip, with times and details, booking dates, change confirmations, group chat messages, the moment at the gate, the meeting with Andrea. I added a line for the upcoming review of the trust and for a future call to the bank. Writing it all down made it feel solid. People can argue about feelings. They can say that you are too sensitive, that you misunderstood, that you are overreacting. It is harder to argue with a timeline. After that, I opened my laptop again and logged into my credit card account. The main charge for the trip was there, as I had known it would be, a large number sitting like a stone in the list of transactions. There were also several smaller charges: luggage fees, seat selection, prepaid hotel tax, all of them tied to my name. I did not change anything yet. I did not press any buttons. I just looked at the screen and let the reality of it sink in. They were on a trip that existed because I had made 1,000 tiny, quiet decisions to save, to plan, to book, to follow through. And they had decided I was dead weight. I clicked out of the payment page and into the messages section. There was an automated note from the card company reminding me of my credit limit and my upcoming due date. It was nothing special, just a standard notice. But it reminded me of something important. I was the only person who had the right to change things on that account. No matter how loudly someone else laughed in a chat or talked in a restaurant, they could not change the name on the card. That name was mine. I logged out and leaned back in my chair. My eyes fell on the shelf where I kept old USB drives and external hard disks. One of them had a label from a few years ago where I had written important backups in my own untidy handwriting. I took it down, plugged it in, and began to copy the screenshots, emails, and notes onto it. While the progress bar moved slowly across the screen, my phone vibrated again. A new notification popped up. It was not from the group chat this time. It was from the travel card app. A fresh charge from the hotel had just hit the account, some kind of upgrade or extra package they had ordered since arriving. I watched the notification fade, then return as a line in the online statement. I did not react right away. I just noted the time and the amount and added them to my notebook. The hotel thought they were dealing with a normal family, using a card freely. The hotel did not know that the person on the hook for that card was now sitting in a quiet office, surrounded by files and a slowly growing pile of evidence, thinking very carefully about what he would and would not continue to pay for. As the backup finished, I closed the laptop and picked up my pen again. Next to the line about the new charge, I wrote 2 words in the margin, small and neat. Those 2 words were simple. Stop here. I did not act on them yet, but they were there, fixed in ink on the page, a small signal to myself that the man who had always said yes was starting to consider the power of saying no. That afternoon, I went into the office, even though I was supposed to be on vacation. The parking lot was half full. It felt strange to pull into my usual spot on a day when I was supposed to be sitting in an airplane seat. For a second, I imagined the timeline where nothing had gone wrong. In that version, my car would be in long-term parking at the airport, and I would be somewhere over the ocean, trying to pretend the cramped seat did not bother my back. Instead, I swiped my badge and walked into the building. The receptionist looked surprised to see me. She asked if my trip had been postponed. I told her that plans had changed. I did not give details. She wished me a good day anyway. The normal kindness in her voice made my chest tighten for a moment. My office was just as I had left it. A desk with neat stacks of papers, a computer with 2 monitors, a whiteboard with project timelines. I dropped my bag in the chair and stood for a minute, listening to the quiet hum of the building. It was comforting. Work had rules, schedules, clear problems that could be solved with plans and effort. A few minutes later, Malak stuck his head into my doorway. He asked why I was there. I told him that the trip had not gone as planned and that I needed to take care of some things in the city. He did not press. He said that I was welcome to use the office if I wanted a place to work or think. Then he mentioned that if I needed to talk to anyone, the company had legal and financial counseling through an employee program. He said the details were in the HR portal. It was a small gesture, but it mattered. He did not laugh. He did not tell me I was overreacting. He just gave me information and respect. I opened my work computer and pulled up the HR portal. The page about employee assistance listed a few numbers. 1 for general counseling, 1 for legal consultations, 1 for financial planning. I wrote them down in my notebook, not because I knew exactly how I would use them, but because I wanted options. Then I turned to my own laptop again. I spent an hour going through my email, making sure I had saved copies of every message from the airline and the hotel. I also downloaded the social media posts I had seen earlier and checked again for new ones. Dylan had posted another video, the pool, the bar, a clip of Brenda in a big sun hat. His caption said something about good vibes only and no stress allowed. Comments flowed in underneath about how perfect it all looked. One person asked where his dad was. He replied that his dad needed a break and hates travel anyway. The ease of that lie hit me harder than I expected. I took a screenshot. Karen had posted a picture of a sunset with a cocktail glass in the corner. Her caption thanked the universe and hard work for making her dreams come true. No mention of me. No hint that any other force had been involved in getting them there. Another screenshot. All of these little pieces felt like lines in a sketch that was starting to form a clear image. On their own, each one could be brushed off. A joke, a thoughtless caption, a private decision. Put together with the emails and the group chat, they formed something else. A pattern of erasing me from the story of my own effort. In the early afternoon, I left the office and drove to the bank. The branch was the same one I had used for years. The manager knew me by name. I sat down in his glass-walled office and told him that I wanted to review my credit card account, the one I used for travel. I explained in calm, simple words that some people were using it for a trip I had paid for, but that I was not present on that trip. He looked at the screen and nodded as he pulled up my account. He confirmed that I was the sole cardholder. He said that no one else was an authorized user. He explained that I had the right to limit future charges if I believed the card was being used in a way I no longer agreed with. He did not judge the situation. That was not his job. He only outlined the rules. He told me what might happen if I blocked the card completely and what might happen if I allowed existing charges to remain but stopped new ones. He talked about hotels sometimes charging in stages, deposit, stay, extras. I listened carefully. I asked questions about what counted as future charges and how quickly changes would take effect. He answered in calm, practiced phrases. He told me that if I wanted to dispute charges later, there was a process. Forms, dates, reasons. I left the bank knowing two important things. First, I did not have to accept an endless stream of charges just because a trip had been planned months before. Second, if I changed the status of the card, I needed to do it for clear reasons and keep records of those reasons. When I got home, I sat at the small kitchen table with my laptop and my notebook. I opened the card account again. The main charges were the flight and the hotel booking. Those had already gone through. They were part of the past now, locked in. The new charge I had seen earlier from the hotel was smaller, but it represented something else. A decision they had made there, in the moment, with no thought about the cost to me. Another notification came in while I was looking at the page. A new hotel charge appeared, this time marked as resort extras. It was not a huge amount, but it was on top of everything else. I imagined them standing at a desk, ordering upgrades or tours, thinking that the invisible wallet would always be open. I picked up my pen and wrote the time and amount in my notebook. Then I drew a thin line under that entry, as if closing a chapter. The bank manager's voice echoed in my mind, explaining that I could protect myself from ongoing use, not punish anyone in a hidden way, not break any rules, just protect myself. I took a slow breath and clicked on the option to contact the card company through secure message. In the box, I wrote a careful note. I explained that I was the sole owner of the card, that I was not physically present at the location where charges were being made, and that I no longer consented to new charges from that hotel and related vendors. I asked them to restrict future transactions from those merchants unless I personally approved them. I read the message twice before sending it. The words were simple and polite. There was no insult, no anger in them. Only facts and a clear request. After I sent it, I called the number on the back of the card to confirm. The representative on the phone checked my identity, listened, and said that they could place specific blocks. She warned me that this might cause issues for anyone still trying to use the card at the hotel. I said that I understood. She asked if I wanted to dispute any existing charges. I told her that, for now, I only wanted to stop new ones. When I hung up, there was a different kind of quiet in the house. It was not the empty quiet from the morning after the airport. It was the quiet that comes after you finally move a heavy object that has been sitting in one place for too long. I went back to my home office and updated my list. I added a line for the bank visit, for the call, for the message. I noted the time and the name of the person I had spoken to. It felt a little like filling out a job report. Except this time, the project was my own life. The rest of the day passed in small tasks. I did laundry. I cleaned up the mess in the kitchen. I walked around the house, picking up items that were left out in the rush to leave, a hairbrush, a charger, a pair of sunglasses. The physical signs of their absence were everywhere, but they no longer made me feel helpless. They felt like evidence of a story that was still unfolding. When evening came, I sat in the living room with the TV on low volume. I did not really watch it. I was too aware of my phone on the coffee table, waiting for something to happen. Around 9, a notification came from the card app. A transaction had been declined at the hotel. A few seconds later, another. Then another. They were trying to run the card, and it was not going through. I imagined the scene on the other side of the world. A front desk clerk explaining, a screen showing a red message, my son or my wife insisting that it must be a mistake. I did not feel pleasure at the thought. I did not feel guilt either. I felt something more precise. Balance. Not revenge, not yet. Just the end of automatic yes. More notifications came through the night. Some were from the card app, some from the airline app, some from social media. I did not check them all. After a while, I put the phone on silent mode and went to bed. Lying there, in the dark, I thought about the next meeting with Andrea. We would go through the trust, the house, the accounts. We would look at options. Some of those options would be painful for the people who had never thought about where their comfort came from. But pain and harm are not the same. Harm is what happens when people hurt others and never face any result. Pain is sometimes just the shadow of reality catching up. I fell asleep with that thought. When morning light came in through the curtains, I reached for my phone almost out of habit. The screen lit up with a long list of missed notifications. I opened the call log. There it was, a number I recognized as the hotel, repeated over and over. Dylan's number, Karen's. Unknown numbers that were probably front desk lines or international calls. The total number of missed calls was high, lined up in a neat column. The phone showed it at the top in bold, like some kind of headline. 96. 96 missed calls in the handful of hours I had slept. I stared at that number and understood, in a quiet, steady way, that the people who had planned to leave me behind were suddenly very interested in reaching me again. When I saw the number of missed calls, I did not answer right away. 96. The screen showed the calls stacked like falling bricks. Hotel numbers, local numbers, Dylan, Karen, even Brenda. A few voicemail icons blinked at the side. Under that, there were message notifications from the group chat, individual texts, and email alerts. I sat on the edge of the bed and let the phone rest in my hand. For a long time, I had been the person who answered every call, who fixed every problem as soon as it appeared. Now I just watched the list. My heart rate stayed steady. I did not feel the usual rush of panic that came with other people's emergencies. Eventually, I put the phone on the nightstand and went to make coffee. The kitchen was still quiet and a little too clean. I measured the grounds, boiled water, and let the normal motions calm my mind. Only after I sat down at the table with the mug did I pick the phone up again. I started with the texts. The first ones were small. Dylan had written that there seemed to be an issue with the card. He said that the hotel was acting weird and that some charges were not going through. Karen had asked if the bank had made a mistake. Her tone, even in text, was still light at that point. As the messages went on, the tone changed. Dylan wrote that the front desk was saying the card had been limited. He said that they were asking for another method of payment. He wrote that this was embarrassing and that I needed to fix it immediately. He added that the hotel was talking about canceling some of their extras if they could not secure payment. Karen's messages came next. She wrote that the hotel had tried the card several times and kept getting declines. She said that they were being treated like they had done something wrong. She wrote that they were far from home, with few options, and that I had to call the bank. Then the messages from the hotel numbers, polite notices that there was a payment problem, invitations to contact them, mentions of policies. Even in text, the formality of it all was clear. They were not trying to be cruel. They were just following procedures. As time went on, the messages became more frantic. Dylan said that they had been told their room package might be downgraded if they could not provide a valid card. He wrote that this would ruin the trip. Karen wrote that they had never been so humiliated and that she could not believe I would let this happen. None of them mentioned what they had done at the airport. None of them mentioned that I was not on the trip because they had quietly cut me out. I listened to one voicemail from the hotel. The manager's voice was calm. He said that he understood there might be a misunderstanding with the card and that he would appreciate a call back to resolve it. He listed the charges and the dates. Everything was clear. I did not listen to the rest of the voicemails yet. I put the phone down, opened my notebook, and added a new set of lines to the timeline. The time the card block happened, the time the first hotel message came in, the time the tone shifted from confusion to demand. Then I called Andrea's office. Her assistant fit me in that afternoon. When I arrived, Andrea was already at the conference table with a stack of papers and my old trust file open in front of her. She had marked several pages with small sticky flags. She went through the key points with me in simple language. The trust, the conditions, the way support could be adjusted if certain lines were crossed. She pointed to the section that talked about serious disrespect, deliberate harm to the relationship, and public humiliation. She said that what had happened with the trip, using my money to arrange a major family event, then excluding me on purpose and joking about it in writing, could reasonably fall under that category. She emphasized that we would need to document everything, which I had already started to do. We talked about options, adjusting future distributions, freezing certain payments, redirecting support toward Lily in a way that bypassed Karen and Dylan, protecting the house, preparing for the possibility of separation or divorce. Andrea never once told me what I should do. She laid out the paths and their probable results. She reminded me that the law moves slowly, that emotions move fast, and that my job was to stay on the slower side. She also suggested that I consider one more thing: how and when to tell my family that I was no longer willing to play the same role. She said that if I decided to make changes, it would be better to present them clearly once the paperwork was in motion, not as a threat or a bargaining chip. After our discussion, we walked together to a nearby office where a notary worked. I signed several documents that Andrea had prepared based on our earlier talks. The papers adjusted how the trust would operate going forward and authorized her to begin some formal steps if needed. I did not read every line in that moment. We had gone through the important parts aloud already. What mattered to me was the feeling of the pen in my hand, the sound of it moving across paper. These were not angry signatures, they were calm signatures. When we were done, Andrea said that the next days might be difficult emotionally. She said that people who are used to being rescued do not react well when the rescue stops. She told me to keep all my communication short and factual and to avoid any promises over the phone. I went home with a folder of copies in my bag and a different weight in my chest. Not just hurt now, but also structure. By the time I walked back into my kitchen, more messages had appeared. Some of them had changed tone again. Dylan wrote that the situation at the hotel was unacceptable, and that if I did not fix it quickly, I would regret it. Karen wrote that the kids were embarrassed, and that this was not how a husband and father should act. I read these words slowly. They were trying to push me back into the old role, the one where I took blame, took orders, and then quietly cleaned up the mess. I replied with one short message in the group chat. I wrote that there had been changes with the card because I was not present and had not consented to further charges. I wrote that I would not discuss details over text. I added that we would talk properly when they came home. I did not apologize. I did not insult anyone. I did not explain more than that. The responses came fast. Dylan sent a string of messages, some accusing, some pleading. Karen wrote that I was being dramatic and that my little stunt was hurting everyone. Brenda wrote that I was acting like a child and that I should think about my family's comfort. Lily's name appeared once. She wrote only that things were a mess there and that she did not understand everything, but that people were upset. There was confusion in her words, not anger. I wanted to answer her directly, to comfort her, but I held back. I knew that anything I said now could be twisted. The best thing I could give her at this moment was a father who stayed steady. 2 days later, they came home early. I found out through an email from the airline at first. A flight change, new return time. Then Karen texted that they had decided to cut the trip short because it was ruined anyway, and because everything was up in the air. When the taxi pulled into the driveway, I watched from the front window for a moment before going outside. They were tanned in uneven patches, eyes tired, movements jerky. The suitcases that had left the house full of excitement now looked heavier. Karen tried to speak in a light voice, as if this were all a strange joke we could laugh about. She said that the hotel staff had been rude, that there had been confusion with the card, that they had done their best to enjoy what they could. Dylan was less smooth. He asked straight out why I had done that thing with the card. He said that I had humiliated them and made them look bad. He did not mention the airport or the group chat. He talked as if this had all started with my call to the bank. Brenda huffed and said that she had never experienced anything like it. Being treated like she might not be able to pay, she said I should call someone and complain. Lily stood a little apart, suitcase handle in her hand. She looked at me in a way I had not seen before. Like she was trying to read something written on my face, I let them speak. When the noise died down, I said one simple thing. I told them that we would have a proper conversation at a neutral place that weekend with everyone there. I said that I had already booked a private room at the restaurant we often use for family events. I told them the time. Karen asked why we could not just talk at home. I answered that I wanted a calm, structured talk and that the restaurant would help with that. Brenda said that it sounded dramatic. Dylan said that he had work and that he did not want some big scene. I replied that if they wanted to understand what had happened and what would happen next, they needed to be there. Lily asked quietly if she could ask me something now. I told her that we would talk, but that it should wait for the dinner when everyone was present and listening. I told her that the only thing she needed to know right now was that I loved her and that none of this was her fault. That seemed to ease something in her expression. She nodded and went inside. The days between their return and the dinner were tense but not explosive. Karen tried several times to catch me alone and smooth things over with soft words and half apologies. She said that the airport situation had gotten out of hand and that the card issue had gone too far on both sides. She kept using words that spread responsibility like fog over everything. I did not argue. I did not correct her version. I just repeated that we would talk at the restaurant. Dylan mostly avoided me, except for a few sharp comments about trust and respect. He spoke as if he were the one who had been betrayed. Brenda muttered loud opinions in the kitchen whenever I was in earshot, about men who held grudges and made points instead of taking care of their families. I spent my time in my home office, reviewing the copies of the documents with Andrea over the phone, confirming that everything we needed for the next steps was in motion. Trust adjustments filed, notices prepared, plans for the house and accounts laid out. Nothing sudden, nothing illegal, nothing hidden. Just a quiet closing of doors that had been left wide open too long. On the day of the dinner, I left the house early. I wore my usual work clothes, not a suit, but neat. I took a slim binder with me, holding copies of the key papers and the printed screenshots and emails. I slipped a small USB drive into my pocket. It contained the same files in digital form. I locked the front door behind me and drove to the restaurant in the early evening light. The private room they had given us was at the back, past the main dining area. I walked through the familiar smell of grilled food and garlic, past other people's laughter and clinking glasses. The staff knew me from years of birthdays and celebrations. One of them nodded and said that our room was ready. I went inside alone at first. The long table was set with plates, folded napkins, and glasses. The room was quiet except for the muffled sounds from the main dining area. At one end of the room, there was a small screen on the wall for presentations, the kind used for work meetings or sports games. A cable hung from it. I set my binder at the head of the table and placed the USB in front of me. Then I sat down and waited. They arrived together a little later. Karen in a dress she wore for special occasions, Dylan in a casual shirt, Lily in a simple outfit, Brenda in her usual bright colors. Greg was there too, invited by Karen, already loud in the hallway. As they approached the door, I could hear Brenda's voice through the wood. She was telling someone that this whole thing had been blown out of proportion, that she hoped I was not going to make a scene, and that the real issue was my hurt pride, not what had happened in Hawaii. Then I heard the light clink of a glass being tapped, and Brenda saying that she might as well start a little toast about their wonderful, if short, vacation before I came in. I stood up, reached for the handle of the door to the private room, and listened to the sound of my mother-in-law starting to speak about sacrifices and family just on the other side. I opened the door before she could finish. They all turned toward me. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Karen smiled too brightly and said that we should sit and talk like adults. I walked to the head of the table, plugged the USB into the screen, and asked the server to lower the music outside. I said that I wanted to explain what had happened from the beginning using facts. On the screen, I brought up the first email, the original booking with 5 tickets, paid on my card. Then the second email, the change request from Dylan, reducing the passengers to 4. I showed the group chat screenshots, the jokes about leaving me at the airport, the messages about how I would be fine at home. Faces shifted. Brenda went quiet. Greg swore under his breath. Dylan said that it was just humor. Karen said that things had gotten out of hand. I placed the bank letter on the table, explaining that as the sole cardholder, I had stopped new charges once I knew the trip was being taken without me. Then I slid out the trust summary. Dylan's support frozen, Karen's access limited, Lily's education protected, Brenda and Greg removed from any gifts. Finally, I played the short audio from the airport. Dylan's voice, calm and careless, telling me there was no ticket, carried through the room. I set my house keys and 1 bank card on the table toward Karen, said she could use them until the court orders arrived, and walked out, leaving their silence behind me.